It is a short name, Jen. She said, did you say Z?
Zed.
She said Zed, which may be, I don't know. Okay, we're revisiting this one more time. And I put this in here purposely because to me, if I could look at this and remind myself, these are all the components I have to make sure I make a kid read. Or I create a reader, I should say. Create a reader. So now we're up at the top. We've kind of done this. And we're going to get up here, and I talked a little bit about background knowledge. We talked about some vocabulary. Okay, so I want to come back to this because this is the thing that I think for most teachers, this is the hardest thing. And I've had a conversation about this because this is the part that's hard. Especially you guys who were given a curriculum with lesson plans in it and stuff, you still need to make it your own. So you probably need to kind of look at those lesson plans and think, and you don't have to rewrite the whole lesson plan, but you need to write how you're going to model it, how you're going to teach it for the learning intention. What is the learning intention in that lesson that you're working at? And make it your own, because that's when it becomes important to you, because you've now planned it. I would have a hard time. I wouldn't have a super hard time teaching Micah's lessons, but if I could see it beforehand, I'd already start to make it my own. I would know what her learning intentions are, and then I could change it. If she just handed it to me like I do with a sub, it's a little different because I'm just teaching. But as soon as I get to think about it a moment, I'm like, ooh, I could do that. I could put this book in. So you want to start thinking. So the week before, you want to kind of think, and even the night before, you do the next lesson. How did today go? Ooh, I need to come back and review that because that was really, they didn't get that. Well, they got that, so I'm going to actually go a little farther. So you start to self-reflect your lessons from that day and plan how you're going to tweak it for the next day. You're going to see huge gains with your kids if you do that. So it's not like, hey, this is what it says, we're going to do it. Try to get away from that. Try to think, how do I make this mine? My lesson. You always need to explain your brain. Kids love to hear how you're thinking. So I actually pretend sometimes that I was thinking about this. Why when I multiply a decimal times a decimal, it gets smaller. I don't know why that happens. Wait. My brain's telling me a part of a part makes another part. Oh, a whole of a whole makes a whole. But when I'm multiplying parts, I get smaller. I actually think multiplication is sort of like division, because division gets smaller. So I say that all out loud to my students in 5th and 6th grade. I call it a paradox. I said we're in paradoxical math right now, because it's totally opposite. Because we've been multiplying, it gets bigger. We've been dividing, and we get smaller. But all of a sudden now we've got decimals, and it's actually almost reversing. Because when I divide with a decimal, guess what's bigger than the quotient? It gets bigger. That is paradoxical. I'm like, that makes my brain want to explode. If you do things like that, they also then go, oh, that's what my brain's doing. Let them know that brains ponder and have like a quandary, like, I just don't get it. That's okay. Show them what you do. When I was planning this last week, I was like, how am I going to teach this? And I started thinking about it. So I can remember when we were trying to visually, everything we're doing in math that we wanted to visually show them. And we're like, how do we show decimal times decimal? We went and got a hundreds chart, and we started, so we did 2 tenths times 3 tenths. We colored 2 tenths this way, 3 tenths this way. Whatever got colored twice was the answer. It was tiny. 2 times 3, 6 hundredths. That's tiny. I took 2 tenths and 3 tenths, and I got 6 hundredths, because that's what was colored. I proved it to them. Remember I said I want you to prove, they need to prove their learning by being visible and measurable. I need to prove it to them when I'm teaching too. Then they're like, I get it, because they need to see it. Our brains have to see it. These little visual kids have to see it. Why do you think movies are so important? Why do you think the screen has become so important? Because it's now got pictures. You know, try teaching before we had any computers. There was a lot of visual stuff happening with my life because, yeah, we had no computers. I mean, when I finally got a small computer and I could show them what leaf cutter ants look like in Amazon right get around the street, look at they're calling around and they got a leaf in their mouth. They're like, I'm so cool. I'm like, what would I like if I had a big screen? And the big screen thing is ask yourself the question. This is probably what I would do all the time with myself. What do I, the teacher, want my students to learn? Not do. Doing is just kind of fluff. What do I want them to learn? They might do something to show me that they learned it, but what do I want them to learn by the end of this lesson? What am I going to ask to check for understanding? If you ask yourself that question, it'll change the way you plan. How do I know my students learned it? It has to be measurable and visible. I have to measure it. Oh, they got it. Oh, that when I put the cube up, they said 8 corners, 6 sides. Ooh, they're getting it. They said it's sort of like a square, except now it's 3D instead of 2D. Oh, I want to use a word. It was, and I remember I wanted to do it. I had a kid in your room, and he kept saying prison, which was right, rectangular prison. And I finally said, why are you saying prison? He goes, I don't know. And I said, you're saying it right. So why is your brain telling you should say rectangular prism and not just rectangular 3D shape? And he goes, And he goes, I think because it's not 2D. And I said, you're right. When I say prism, all of a sudden I know it's something I have to hold in my hand. If I say pyramid, it's a shape that I have to hold in my hand. So he was doing it without being told. So all you'd have to do is tell it to everyone, hey, we use the word prism when we make this into this rectangular 6-sided shape. It's called a prism. And then you start to explain that word by showing it to them. It's amazing what their little brains did. Like he was doing it automatically, he just didn't know what it meant. It was so cute, loved it. I'm not checking you guys, I'm just having so much fun teaching your kids. I mean, it's just so much fun. I walk out going, that was fun. Can students do independent work? Yes, they can. As long as they understand what they're doing in that independent work. Independent work should not just be playtime. You can have playtime, but if it's the follow-up to your lesson, make sure it's purposeful. Don't just give them things to do. So if you've got plan centers, plan the centers. And then it'll mean more to you and more to your kids if you do that. Centers are important, but make sure they're planned. Just like we were talking this morning, you were talking with Pam about collaborative conversations. You have to plan the conversation. When I was a new teacher like you guys, all kids need to talk. So we had all our kids talking. Eventually we were like, what are they talking about? They're doing what? What do you have for lunch? What are you going to do at recess? And we're like, oh, I think we're supposed to purposely plan this collaborative conversation. Yeah, that changed it. But same thing happened in Oxford as a principal. You know, I said, you need to have them understand vocabulary. I walked in this lady's like, okay, what does this word mean? All of you guess. And I'm like, no! Because that didn't help at all. She goes, wasn't that great? I go, I hate it. See, it's hard to be a principal. No, I don't think that was very good because you were having them guess the word. You should have taught the word to them. Oh, I mean, there were 6th graders, and yes, they were EL kids, but I said, that did nothing. Because some of them were so far off. Now you've had them do something that means nothing with this word. Now you got to reteach that. So yeah, don't do guessing. Guessing doesn't do anything. So she's like, oh. And she goes, that's what we've always done. I go, okay, we're going to change that. We're going to be more purposeful and intentional because I want you to be an effective teacher. And that's really what I think you guys, effective means I've got learning happening all the time in my room. And that's of course what you want. That's why you're here. So let's keep working on that. About planning, measurable, visible, explaining your brain. What's your thinking?
Question.
Say it louder. Someone said it.
The parents simple questions.
Okay.
Materials.
Okay. Keep going.
It teaches students to think about their learning. And so when you're modeling and talking about what you're thinking, it helps them to realize that it's not just something that you do.
She probably went to about 10 slides ahead right now. What she's talking about self-reflection and building autonomy for their learning. They need to build autonomy for learning. They can't wait for you to say, yeah, you're right. They'll tell you, I think I got it. I mean, we had an epiphany yesterday in math, and they got it. Like you felt it immediately. They were like, I understand place value. And they got it. I mean, we didn't have to say, did you get it? They were like excited. And you could feel the room like all of a sudden. So don't get scared because it might get a little loud. As soon as they get it, they kind of get bubbly. They're like, whoa! And then they're like, what happens if we add the next place and the next place? And what if we go 6 places? I mean, all of a sudden they realize there's a pattern and they're excited. Because once learning happens, their brain starts making connections. And they're like, wait a minute, this is like forever. I can keep learning forever. You know, some kids say, what's, a million times a million. I'm like, oh, that's a lot of zeros. Let's figure it. So I said, you're going to see something called 10 to the 12th power. What's that? I go, when you get to 6th grade, they'll get that. But that's 12 zeros. That's how big this number is. Ooh, how fun that is. modeling, and this slide I've done staff development, I was using some of these PowerPoints for our reading test in California for teachers that couldn't pass the reading test, because apparently their colleges didn't teach reading, they just told them to read the book, and you can't pass the test if you just read the script. So they were failing. So what it comes down to is you've got to model how you know reading. So this slide's been in my repertoire probably now for 10 years. Metacognition. What do you think about your own thinking as you read? You're analyzing your own thinking. Ooh, that's deep. Reading is a complex task. It is not easy to read. It is not easy to understand some words. It is hard. What you're doing with reading is hard. That's why usually numeracy is the higher score in a state test and literacy is lower. Because literacy means reading, writing, speaking, and listening. There's a lot that goes into reading. And it's hard. It's complex. Your brain does so much in one little second. Read that word, read those letters, do the sound, comprehend, analyze it. What are you thinking? All that stuff happens in split seconds. It's amazing. You want to explicitly model your process, your metacognition. What are you thinking as you read? If I read a page, I might go, oh man, my hero's like, these words rhyme. This word doesn't rhyme. You want them to start to hear your own thinking. And then you ask them, what were you thinking? And at first they won't say anything. Pretty soon they're going to tell you what they're thinking. Especially in math, help them explain, do a problem incorrectly, on purpose. Tell me why this problem is wrong. Or what's wrong with this problem. Explain what we need to do. Not just the answer. Don't let them just give you the answer. I know what the answer is. No, why? What did I do wrong? Because once they can analyze the missteps, they can then remember their own missteps. So you're teaching them how to analyze, how to read, and how to do math. That's very important. So you want to think about what's hard for kids. When I lay in bed at night, I always have a few kids in my head. I can see their faces. I'm like, he's not going to get it. How am I going to help him get it? One year I was the opposite. I had 16 what we call gifted children. Really bright. My girlfriend came to 5th grade. She didn't want to have any bright kids. She didn't feel she was good at 5th grade. So I got 16 of them. And I was like, I thought, okay, but gifted kids are not easy. They challenge you. They talk a lot. And they challenge you. They question everything. And so I'm like, okay, this is quite an interesting year for me. But it really grew me. Because I'd lay in bed going, how am I going to extend them and keep the rest of the kids okay? It made me better at math. It made me better at everything. And I was so thankful for it in the end because it made me a better teacher. But yeah, and I had to honor them. And they were really thankful. And they would say, because they were old enough to say, thank you. They really realized that I'm trying to extend them. They go, thank you for trying. No one has ever tried. They're like, you're good at math. Just do the problems. You're done. And I was like, no, that's sad because I want them to go to high school and be amazing. I had a kid that could not speak any English. 5th grade, came from another country, could barely do math because there's a lot of words by 5th grade, but I knew he was smart at math. He could do the numbers, he could do the algorithms, and I kept working with them. And the best story is my kids came and said, when Howard went to high school, he was #1 in math. And he said, because you didn't give up on me. And you know, and I had another kid that said that. I did, he was taught in Spanish, we wrote a book. His book was horrible. Can I just say it? The words were horrible. But he was an artist. So I'd say, tell me the story in your pictures. And I'd type it. And I kept his book, and one year he came, he was graduating from high school, and he goes, Mrs. Hallman, I need my book. I go, no, I've used this example because it's my EL student that did an amazing job. He goes, I'm going on to college. I go, you are? He goes, because you never quit. And I go, because I saw potential. And that makes you, it kind of makes you tear up because you're like, that's how effective you can be as a teacher. And I said, here's your book. And I went and ran it off on the computer because I'm like, oh, I at least have a copy. And I said, what are you going to do? He goes, I actually think I'm going on to get a PhD in science. I'm very good at science. And I'm like, PhD, a doctorate? So he's already planned. I'm going undergrad, master's, PhD. I'm like, you go for it. There's a one kid that one year we were doing the book, I took him home at 9 o'clock because we had to finish this book because the next day was young author's day. He goes, have you ever done this with anyone else? I go, no, and I never am. I'm not staying 9 o'clock at night to finish a book with a kid. He goes, but it was was really fun. Jose, it was really fun. And those are the things that you will remember. And that's why I taught college. That's why I'm here for you guys. I want you to realize how amazing your job is. It's amazing. And you will affect children. You will never, ever go, I didn't do anything with my life. You will have done tons with your life. If you're with kids, you've done tons. So, teach them how to interact with text. Teach them how to resolve problems. Teach them how to think aloud. Do they visualize something? Talk to them about shared reading. Have them talk about their stories, what they got from that story. So model and then have them share their modeling too. You have a lot of different learners. I had a lot of different, I had kids that couldn't read, I had kids with special needs, I had English learners, and of course I have advanced learners. English learners, you have to really work with vocabulary. Just having them repeat the words does not work. Talking about the words. That means you might have to do only 4 words. Talk about what those 4 words mean. Don't have like 20. It's overwhelming to me. So keep it in short little chunks and keep working what those words mean, because that will help them when they get to meaning making. If you have a reading kid that has difficulty, just sit with them and kind of analyze where their reading difficulties are. If you've got an advanced learner, make sure that you extend their learning by asking deeper questions. You can be reading the same text with all kids, just make sure you ask a deeper question. That's kind of cool though. Sometimes a kid you don't think wants to answer it might answer it. You're like, oh, they're deeper than I thought. They just hadn't been tapped into yet. Pretty fun. And you'll see I love that word metacognition because it is the only way you get to deep understanding. Goody Bird Green, if you want to go read it, it's very cute. She loves to use multiple word meanings. So I just finished with a story about her on the flying carpet from China. China, she didn't actually go from the country China, she went from the town China, and she really didn't go on a flying carpet, but the carpet was hanging out the door, a door window, and when her dad went around the corner, it flew out, and she and the cat went flying out of the road. So technically, she always tells an absolutely true story, but she might stretch the words a bit. So then I left the kids with, okay, they said, what happened to Catman? I said, Catman ran away, and he was consumed by a cow. And they go, consumed? The cow's gonna eat him? I go, that's what she said, consumed, and I'll give you guys a hint. Consumed means that Catman fell in love with the cow. Consumed. So he didn't leave the pasture. 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, they began to have words, and I'm going to skip this, you can read it later. This is close reading. I'm going to just talk about, so I talked about rereading text. When you do close reading, this is what you'll begin to see with your kids. They'll begin to analyze the author's word choice. Why did they use that word? Why did they name it that? Why was the title that? What predictions are happening? What questions am I asking myself? What do I visualize? And that's what I was doing with the kids yesterday in the finance room. Visualizing what Beauty Bird wore to class. She dresses in a pink tutu, green leotards, or green stretch pants, and a polka dot shirt. She's got an outfit on. I want them to visualize that without seeing the picture. And then you want to, what do we know already about those characters? And how do we keep developing them? You have 5 types of vocabulary you're actually teaching. Of course, you're doing listening. That's what you guys are doing a lot of because you've got 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. You're, of course, speaking all the time. And you need them to speak too. You're beginning to show them written words. It's okay to show them written, it's okay to show them the book as you're reading. You have sight words, we talked about that. And then you must get to meaning even when they're reading silently. That's the hard part. Kids will read independently, they have no idea what they've read. I don't usually stop them if they have a book that's too hard, because eventually they'll figure out I'm not really enjoying this story. But let them read it and look at the pictures, because you're going to be teaching reading to them. So if it's independent reading and they picked up and you're like, that's a little hard. My kids, by 5th grade, I said, if you read the first page of a story and you get 10 fingers up, that book is too hard for you. So even your little kids, you can say, if you read the first page and you got to 5 words that you didn't understand, you might want to get a different book. That might be a little hard, but next month it might be easy, because I'm teaching you how to read. So, that kind of stuff. So you start to have them self-reflect on their own reading level. You have 3 tiers of vocabulary. You have basic vocabulary, that you guys will all work in. Sight words, nouns, verbs, adjectives, that's our basic words. Then you get to high frequency words. And some of them, like even the word justify, analyze, determine. I can remember my teachers, I said this to them, I go, your EL kids don't understand the word direction. It's on every paper and you're not reading the directions to you. You say, read the directions. And they're looking at me. So then one teacher went back in 5th grade, she goes, I asked my kid, what is directions? He goes, north, south, east, west. He was very confused when he was reading the directions on the paper because he was looking for north, south, east, west. He's like, what is she talking about? She goes, you're right. And I go, because that's all he knows. When you do math with EL kids and you say times, 3 times 3, they're thinking that clock. So we don't do 3 times 3 anymore. We go 3 3s, 9, 3 4s, 12. We don't even put the times in there because that word's confusing them. It's making it harder. And I learned that from the UK. I was in Paris and I was watching a kid. I go, what are you doing? He goes, I'm doing 3 3s. I go, 3 3s? Yeah, 9. And I looked at my friend because we were teaching. We got to go to Finland for ambassadors of the United States, which is, I did learn that everyone teaches the same all over the world. It's pretty cool. But he was doing, because we don't do that. So actually skip counts. When you get to multiplication, just skip count. Let's do the 3s. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. That's all they need to know. How many 3s are in 15? 5. Take away that times, because it's very confusing. It's also really redundant. 3 times 3, 3 times 4. So yeah, we've changed. So I've changed. Believe me, when I first started teaching, I did times all the time. But I saw my kids in Oxford look back at the clock like, why does she keep referring to the clock, the time? And I'm like, yeah, they don't get that. So this is content. So this is what I was talking about with math. You have lots of words in math, but you must teach them. You must draw things for them because you say the word. So a perfect example is just your operations. So operations, there's 4 operations only in math. There's no more. You just do a lot of things with those 4 operations. Operations are add, subtract, multiply, and divide. These are words you use all the time. So these are words that we must teach them. I could say multiplication here, that might be better. First of all, they have a sign. This is the sign. We don't say plus. That's what the sign is called. We say 2 add to 2. You can say 2 plus 2, but we aren't plussing. So you hear kids say, I'm plussing. No, you're not. Plus is just the sign. This is the minus sign. So I really don't minus, I subtract. I multiply with the times, and we know that eventually the x becomes a dot when you get to 5th grade because you're into variables. Division is either this sign, but then when you get to upper grade, it's a fraction mark. That's the division sign. So these are the things you need to understand so you can start to teach it when you get into that kind of math. Most of you are going to stay here. And so then you need to understand what is the answer called. That's the most important thing, because if they're on a test and they say, what? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I just noticed, Kim. I'll be right.
No, it's all right.
In your test, it might say, what is the sum? Sum means I'm going to add. There's your hint word. Or it might say, what are they all together? So you start to teach them clue words that will help them in problem solving. Subtract, difference.
Left.
Or what's left. So that's what I mean by doing vocabulary. That's content-specific words. You have to teach them. You can't just assume they've got it. So I'll tell you something interesting about problem solving and multiplication and division. So I used to have a chart like this, and we used to put all the clue words that went with all 4 operations. What we found is, if you're doing multiplication, let me see if I can come up with probably another one. I have 6 cookies on 10 sheets. How many are there? So it's How many are on there? Yes. And then if you do each, if each is in the, there is 50 pieces of candy, how many are in each pile? If each is in the question, it's always going to be division. If each is in the problem itself, it's usually multiplication. So those are little tricks, because I was terrible at problem solving because no one taught me this. When I became a teacher, my dad said, you're never going to be able to teach it, you were horrible at it. There was the challenge. I'm like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to figure it out. And I did. So it's kind of fun to start to really analyze the vocabulary. So it's very important that you understand I am teaching content-specific vocabulary, and I actually need to teach it for them to understand it. You do a lot with science, a lot with animals and habitats. Those are words you have to teach them. Here, if I can give you a hint, this is part, whole. So when I'm doing adding, I'm using a part and a part, which makes a whole. The opposite is subtraction starts with whole and then goes part to part. If you teach it that way, your kids will begin to understand. So when I have 30, there's only 30 pieces. That is as big as it's going to get. And if I subtract 10, I'm going to have 20 left, because 20 plus 10 makes 30. If I'm part, whole, 10, 20 makes 30. The whole's there. That's how you analyze words yourself, and that's how you can help your kids. Does that make a little sense? That's what it means by content-specific vocabulary. And if you do that, you'll start to get depth and breadth. You'll start to get background knowledge, and they'll make connections to other things that you talk about in math. It won't be new every day. They'll go, wait, that was kind of like what we do in add and subtract. Because guess what? Multiplication division is a lot like add and subtract. And all of a sudden they'll make that connection. Like, oh, that's like adding. Multiplication is like adding. Division is like subtraction. It actually is. If I had more time with math, I just love teaching that. But I was told I need to do. Background knowledge is important. And I started that this morning. I said, we're doing phonemes. It needs to get stuck in your head. That's what it means by background knowledge. That you can draw it out whenever you want. It's not memorizing. It's I remember it because I've played so much with it. It's just part of my brain now. That's what we have to do in school. And the teacher will say, what are you thinking now? You have a literal reader that will tell you exactly what the text said. They will only want to do it that way. That's okay, they're at basic level. Then you'll have a few that will start to paraphrase, and then you'll have a few that will start to elaborate. They'll just go crazy and tell you stuff because they're already thinking about meaning. They've already got metacognition. So you're going to have these levels of readers in your room. Not everyone's going to be here, and it's not bad if they're right there because that's where they start. Little readers. So you might see the word schema instead of background knowledge. So schema means the exact same thing. So you might be like, what is a schema? Like, what's schema? Schema means what's in your head. It's background knowledge. So I've taught something, like if I taught you this might become schema. And they're like, oh, I remember they taught me part, whole, that's addition. So that's a schema. They're pulling it out of their head. This is where we try to get to. This is my goal always as a teacher. I try to get where they learn something and they creatively transfer to something else, to a different discipline. I truly know they know it. Because when you can take something that I taught in math and tie it to a science project, so I used to do literature called, a book called Love That Dog. And then we got into doing the body unit. And they took poems that we had written with Love That Dog. They took and made a body system poem for the body system. That's a transfer. That's I took how to write a poem, and I took the knowledge that I have from science and made my own poem. And that's kind of how we ended up in Finland. We put that in as a, they're like, how are you working and getting kids to think deeper? We wrote that up, and then we got sent to Finland as the ambassadors to the United States. What I said is, I was with 75 teachers, and believe me, they all know how to teach. They all have the exact same thing in how to teach well. We all said testing was not the way to go. Teaching was the way to go. Getting them to think was the way to go. It was amazing. That was 2009, I think. That's a long time ago. Yeah, 2009. Or seven. And it was fun, because I realized, oh, I'm in America. And these people are in Finland and they're in Singapore and they all think the same. Singapore math we took in America because they quit doing a whole bunch of problems and they started really getting to deep thinking. Singapore math's amazing because it's all about thinking. It's amazing, and the kids really get math because once you understand it, you can do any math really because there's schema, there's background knowledge. So it's amazing what your little brains, those little brains that you have, can do. They'll learn more than you ever thought they will learn. I've kind of talked about that. So this, visual, kinesthetic, tactile. So every time when I plan with my teachers, I say, do we have a visual? We usually have an auditory. And do we have any movement? So you can, with Mike, I realized I was doing too long, and I made them stand up. They had to move and do something, because their little 5-year-olds can give maybe 10 minutes when they're advancing. So your lessons have to change about every 5 to 10 minutes. You can stay on the same theme, but it just has to be a different movement, stand up, walk, whatever, because their little brain's done sitting. As soon as they sit too long, they lose interest. But if you're not done with the lesson, just change. I watched my girlfriend teach 90 minutes one day on introducing a book, and she moved him here, then she moved him over here, did something else with the same idea, moved him back over here, and they were with her the whole time. As long as she kept them moving and kind of changed the perspective, they stayed with her. And by the end, they did not want to stop the lesson. They're like, aren't we reading today? She goes, tomorrow. They're like, oh, we got to start reading today. They were so excited. She got this book so set up with Boxcar Kids. And she's like, we got to read now. And she's like, well, if you really want to, I'll give you the book. You can start reading. And I laughed. I go, yeah. How many teachers do I can't get my kids to read? And your kids are like, I got 2 minutes before recess. I'm going to start reading. Because she had got them so excited about the book. So think about how you can raise levels of excitement, elicit interesting conversations in their head, and they want to do what you want them to do. And you just did it in a very creative way. They love to learn. We've done all this. I'm going to talk a smidge about hungry thing, but we did, wonky donkey. Napping House is about sequence. I also brought the book In My Father's Dragon, which probably works really well 2nd grade. It's a book where a little boy kind of has a problem solution. He goes to an island to try to save a dragon, but he's got to encounter a bunch of animals that want to eat him. So he's got a lot of problem solutions to go. So Tall Grass is kind of a fun one to look at. It's one that my daughter absolutely loved. I think it was the first book I might have actually bought her. She said she was 18 months in a stroller and she wanted this book, and I thought, okay. And we read this and read this. This is not hers, but In the Tall Grass. And I think Manette, so we did when Panette was student teaching, I think her partner took green paper and she had them like rip grass blades. They went out and studied the grass, and then they came and made their own little paper, their own art thing with this, and made their own verbs. So see, that's kind of, and that was 1st grade, and they loved it. So if I was doing this with kids, I might say, okay, you got to act this out with me. Crunch. I got it going. Munch.
Lunch.
Caterpillar's lunch. Rhyme, rhyme, rhyme. Dart. Dip. Hummingbird sip. So this word rhymes. It's got verbs in it. You could have kids act it out. You could do a cute art project with it. So again, words, what you're trying to get them to do with rhyming, trying to get them to understand verbs. Books are amazing. So use them as much as you possibly can. Notice this is a different, my husband said you made a mistake, put close. I put this on purpose. So I'm gonna be honest, and I'm probably gonna step on a bunch of people's toes here. Word searches don't really work because they're guessing the words. They don't really know what the words mean. Look at this activity. This is what I would do instead of a word search. You've taught a lesson on solar system. You taught a lesson on planets or whatever. Look at what we're going to do. So it has to be pretty short, less than 250. If you want to have a word bank, you could, the words, but let's see if we can do this. The sun is the center of our solar system. We live on the planet.
On Earth.
Good. Is the 4th planet from the sun. What do you think that is? Our planet, our moon, our what?
Planet.
Our planet travels around the sun how much? Okay, or I probably put once a year, 365. I picked days, you'd have to add 2 words. The moon
Travel.
Someone used a good word. Revolves around the earth, the orbit takes, so maybe it's not revolves, maybe revolving is the earth around the sun. It might be orbit, or the orbit takes 27 days to go around the earth. The moon looks different during the light from the, is it sun? Is it changes the way? So you can see, you might want a word bank here, but you can have a discussion on it. You see what they're doing? Now they're pulling brain stuff out of that you taught them. Like, is that the right word? You could argue it a little bit. They are called the phases of the moon. Oh, so we're going phases. So if we get stuck in here, I'm going to go back to a book that has phases. And I'm going to talk about that. We're going to come back. Do you see how this begins to be more intentional, more purposeful? I did word searches my whole life until I didn't realize they were guessing. And they didn't know what the words meant. And they couldn't really spell the words correctly. So this started to happen. This is very EL. Your kids would benefit from this tremendously. This is really, really good. I might for a while have a word bank, but eventually you don't have to. Maybe your high kids, you don't give them a word bank. You say, show me what you know. And they're like, yeah. They love that. Challenge them. So this is kind of a fun thing that my girlfriend and I do. She's the one that actually invented it. She talks, I heard you guys talk about character traits. So she said, so I'm going to use Penny the Marble. So she says, take a look at the pictures. I'm going to show you a picture. Let's see if I can do this pretty quickly. So I've got a picture here. Penny, she's with her little doll Rose. She's walking down the sidewalk and she sees something in the grass. So I'm looking at a picture. She's looking, she's going, okay. And then, what action does she do? You can see she's kind of looking. What? She's looking up. What does that mean if I'm looking up? Is she doing what? What do you think she's thinking? Should I take that off the grass? Is it her yard? I really like it. So then she's like, If she actually gets closer. How many of you have done that as a kid? Or even, let me take a look at it. Ooh, that's really pretty. I'm only doing pictures with you guys. Then she does this. She picks it up, puts it in her pocket, and knows where her eyes are doing. What is she worried about? Someone. So what do you think Penny just showed us about her character trait here? So we looked at the picture, we looked at the action. I could have read more to you. Give me a character trait of Penny right now. What do you think? Curious, I could go with that. And she'd have to get, so I'm going to say, Panette, tell me why you're going to use curious. So you have to give me evidence so it's not just an opinion. Does anyone have something different?
Brave.
Cautious. So who said?
Brave.
Brave. Ooh, that's interesting. Worried. Say that again. Worried. Worried. Why is she worried? And what did she do? She took something that didn't belong to her. So I could say she's dishonest, but I'd have to give you evidence. So there's the difference with just doing opinions. So you want your kids back into the text and say, well, I looked at her face, and I think she might not think she did the right thing. And when you get into the book, she gets home and she doesn't feel good at all. Why doesn't she feel good at all? Because she stole something. She's guilty. Good. So you could do this whole book and so you could talk about character traits. So maybe she does have a conscience that she needs to take it back. You'd have to find out. So I wouldn't do the whole book that day. I'd talk about that, talk about character traits. As soon as you do that once, guess what's going to happen with other books? Kids are like, ooh, what kind of character traits does that character have? Because they don't always tell you in a book. They want you to think about it. So it's a great way for you to teach character traits. So we call it PAW. Pictures, actions, words. You can't just look at one thing because the pictures might. And then we always make them go back and support their evidence. We don't want an opinion. I don't want to hear, I think so. I'm like, tell me why you think so. Find evidence in this book to support your thinking. And they do. I can't argue that. I'm like, when, like Panette said, what did you say, Panette? You said curious? So I would say, Panette, go find curious here. And if she can, I'm like, way to go, Panette. Because she supported her thoughts with something from this text. That's what you want. Thoughts, questions on that? I kind of went a little deeper with you on that. shaking your head like you might get it when I ask you a question.
Can you go back? The paw trace, what's the E?
The E is the, good question, the evidence. Second, yes. So I don't do E right away. I do paw, and then eventually go, okay, I can't let you just have an opinion. You have to support it. Because Common Core standards say you can give me Common Core and you can give me a trait, but every time you give me an opinion, you have to go support it with the book.
Make it logical.
Yes, it has to belong to them. And we all look at books differently, right? We all look at text differently. Now, I might argue that as a teacher, like, I don't really, and sometimes they used a word wrong. And you're like, oh, the word you used, that doesn't really mean that, so it doesn't, oh, then I don't agree with that. Okay, and that way you can check. He's like, gosh, what word did you think that meant? So and then that's a great way for you to check. But this is so important. This is the beginning of you deepening their understanding of the book. Simple, little, 3-chapter book. Great pictures, great words, great dialogue, and she probably does do the right thing in the end. So she might be a pretty good mouse. So. But her mom knows something's wrong because she doesn't want to she doesn't even want to make cookies with her mom. She's that guilty. Remember that reading and writing go together. They're reciprocal. So we've been talking about teaching decoding. That's phonics. We're reading. But if you teach reading, you also need to have them write, and that's encoding. If I want to know what kids think, and they're capable of writing, remember they don't have to write, they don't have to print beautifully, they don't have to spell perfectly, but they can start to communicate with writing with me, I want to do that. I want them to understand we're communicating. They can read their words out loud. That's why I said we went from think, pair, share to think, write, pair, share. Because then they were committed to something instead of walking and go, I didn't really think of anything. What did you think? So if they have writing, and I don't let them leave their seat till they show me they have some writing. So they can sit there like I didn't do it. I'm like, okay, you can sit there. It's fine. You know, with us you're going to get together. And I'm like, oh, I want to get up. So they write something. So that's how we got away. We just, think, pair, share just became kind of a joke. Because you use it over in the priest, I'm like, I don't have to think. My teacher never asked me. So evidence, it was almost the ticket to stand up. Okay, you can stand up and you're going to that's how we get writing. Because writing should be part of our thinking. I mean, that's how we communicate with each other. We all write text now. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. These are, and I just put this in for your 8 parts of speech. You have these, it's very hard. I'll show you one cool thing I've learned with prepositional phrases as quickly as I can. I have a hard time kids remembering prepositions on, between, so I make a mountain and I say, how can we go through this mountain? We can go in the mountain, we can go over the mountain, we can go through the mountain,
Under the mountain.
we can go under the mountain, we can go beneath the mountain. Those are all prep words, and then you can make a phrase. Good sentences have at least one prepositional phrase because it gives me a direction, it gives me a time, it gives me something. So if you want your sentences to get better, do prepositional phrases with them. But do this, and I also use the plane going through a cloud sometimes instead of the mountain. So that's a fun way, and I've done that with I do that with college kids. Because they're like, I don't know what the prep words are. I'm like, okay, we're gonna make a mountain. And how do we go through it? Around it, over it, in it. And so they remember that. You want to have ways for kids to remember stuff. That's the important part of teaching. Morphology is where you're gonna start to, and I'm gonna do this quickly and we can ask questions later, but morphology is where kids start falling apart because the words get bigger. It scares them. They're like, I've never seen where there's a base word and then they add suffixes or prefixes to it. They change the ing, the ed, the s's to possessive s's to big, bigger, biggest. Make sure you double the g. And then this is kind of a fun graphic that you could do. Now all these words don't work, but I can do helps, helping, helped. I can do helper. Can I do unhelper? Oh, that didn't make sense. Can I do helpers? Yes. Could I do helpful? Could I do helpfulness? So you can see how you can start. So this is morphology. You can add things to a base word, help. There's lots of those. When you start, you're gonna go, wait a minute, there's a lot of words that have morphology. Yes, absolutely. This is what you need to start teaching. Probably by 2nd, 3rd grade, 4, 5, and 6, that's what they need to be teaching. That's where kids give up. Like, that word's too long. Well, break it down. So you want them to analyze the word and say, wait, I can find one word I see the word help. Okay, I see the word beauty, like beautiful. Someone's trying to spell beautiful. How do we spell beauty? Now we take off the Y and add the I and put full. So you start to look at only the root word or the base word and let them start to add on to it. That's morphology. That is where we've realized probably in the last 5 years that our kids are not doing well. So teach it. I don't say Greek and Latin roots because my EL kids are like, I can't do it. I came from Mexico. So I don't say that. I just say suffixes and prefixes. It's probably how we're going to end it because this is kind of what Panette said. She goes, how do you get deeper? So I started really thinking, how do I get deeper with my questioning? How do I get deeper with understanding? You've got to start to think about how your questions help deepen. So I might use a key detail. I might identify a key detail and ask them a question about it. I might say, why did they use a simile here? That means you have to teach a simile. My favorite book, come on Jeff, Quick as a Cricket. So, all about similes. I'm as strong as an ox. I use this K to 6. I use this K to college. It is so good for similes. I have them compare themselves to 3 different animals. They're the cutest things you've ever seen. And so use quick as a cricket. So similes. Because why do they not understand reading? Because they don't understand metaphors and similes. You got to teach it to them. You want to talk about why did the author name those characters that? We found in college authors actually named characters because the name meant something. Once we started doing a name study, we were shocked. What they actually named that character is that's his character traits. I'm like, gosh, they did that on purpose. So it's really fun to start to analyze why authors do certain things. You want to build inferences by asking the why question or the open-ended question. And you do need to have some opinions. Make 2 questions that kind of make people kind of choose a side. Like, what do you think? Like, I could have said, do you think Penny should have taken the marble? Do you think so? Come over here. Do you think she should have come over here? Let's argue what we should have done. Talk about right and wrong in your classroom. There it is. Well, I think they should take it. No one was watching. Oh, but someone was watching. So, yeah, the great conversations you could have with kids. This is what I want you to remember. If you want your kids to talk, you got to ask them great questions. If you don't ask great questions, they will be very quiet. And if they don't talk, they're not learning. So that will be my challenge. You're like, the kids are talking too much. But I'm going to say, are they talking about good things? Or are they talking about things they should be talking about? If they're talking about good things, let it go. Because it's pretty awesome how much they're learning. This is just there, and I literally went through levels of comprehension, literal, inferential. You can look at these and kind of give yourself ideas. Evaluative is the hardest one. It's for the kid that's probably gifted in reading, could get more evaluative on certain things. So that's not the one you're choosing at the moment. Eventually you'll have some kids that will go there. And then I don't have time for Hungry Thing, but Hungry Thing is here. And if you want me to come read it next week, you can take a look at it, maybe I do. Hungry Thing, and I won't show the picture because I like them to draw their own picture of the Hungry Thing. So now I've already shown it to you, like you can't get it out of your head. But because I like them to think, what does their Hungry Thing look like? Because he likes food. And I'll tell you this one thing he likes to eat. I like to eat gollypops. Dollypops. Which might be lollipops. So he does total nonsense food words, and that would be so fun for your kids. So I did that with I was running an art class in my house, and I'll show you what my kids did. So there's the kids, they made their own Hungry Thing. They had their own food that they were going to eat at Thanksgiving, and they were totally nonsense, and it was a blast. And look at how cute those monsters are. That's creative thinking. That's creative thinking, like I want to have mashed potatoes and gravy, but I'm not going to say mashed potatoes and gravy, I'm going to say smashed potatoes and gravy. And then we have to figure out what's mashed potatoes, gravy. So creative thinking, it's really easy to come up with creative thinking. Talk to me, I'd love to talk to you. And I'll be here next week, probably Tuesday, Wednesday, and probably Friday. If you want me to do something in classroom, I'd be more than happy to. I do love to read books, but expect that I'll ask questions, because I can't read a book without asking questions. And I finished on time. Yeah.